Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, my fellow brothers and sisters out on the interwebs. I hope you guys are doing absolutely phenomenal today. This is Yasin Arshad, your brother Yasin, as always. And in today's episode, I want you to stick around with me until the end because we are going to demystify and we are going to clarify and we are going to re-understand the true meaning of life, which means that we're actually going to fully understand the word ibadah. And the reason why it's so critical to understand what the real translation of the word ibadah is because we know that the reason why we were put on this planet is for the sake of ibadah. We know that the very reason why we are in existence is to make ibadah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so this word ibadah is often the most mistranslated word and actually one of the most important words to have a correct understanding of. And the reason why it's so important is because we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Al-Dhariyat, in ayah number 56, which is towards the end of the surah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us that وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ, I have not created the jinn and the ins except for liya'budun, except for ibadah. And if you look at the translation of this ayah, right, it's in Surah Al-Dhariyat, ayah number 56. Dhariyat, ayah number 56, the translation of this ayah, in a lot of the translation is going to say that I have not created the jinn or the humans except that they should worship me. Except that they should worship me. And this definition of worship is the number one mistranslated for the word ibadah. And the truth is that the word ibadah does not mean worship, especially not in English. And this is why oftentimes we as English speakers or those who are utilizing English translations, we come up with a deformed and a Frankenstein version of our understanding of our deen, is because of the fact that we are utilizing translation which doesn't encapsulate the true meaning of the words. And that's why inshallah the goal of this podcast episode is to really encapsulate the real meaning of the word ibadah. So let's talk about the word worship. The word worship in the English language, if you were to look it up, right, the word worship in the English language has the connotation for whenever you think of people from other faiths, they are the ones who are going to worship, right? They're going there to go to church and they go there and they worship, right? If you look at the actual definition of the word worship, it means the feeling or expression of reverence and adoration for a deity. That's the literal definition in the English language for the word worship. On top of that, when you think of worship and you think of people of other faiths, they have their own way of going there to worship. They go there, the Nasara, the Christians, they have like the music that they play and they have like all of these, contexts of worship. So if you were to take that understanding and take that meaning of the word worship, then somebody might say, okay, so the real reason why we were put on this planet is for the sake of worship, and worship for us is salah, right? Now, even that doesn't 100% line up with the actual literal definition of the word worship when you're showing reverence or adoration for a deity, right? And it doesn't line up. And so the reason why it's so critical to understand is that in Islam, when we have ibadah, if the purpose of our life is to make ibadah, then what happens when we go to work? What happens when we spend time with our family? What happens when we go to the gym and take care of our body? Right? All of this time that we spend that we are not in quote-unquote salah and quote-unquote worship, then are we not fulfilling the purpose of our life? Are we therefore being disobedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Because that's the ultimate purpose of why He created us, right? And this is why we get into a very deviated misunderstanding of the word ibadah. The word ibadah, and the most accurate translation that my teachers have taught me, and the way that I can think about this, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward him for teaching me this, is the word ibadah actually means obedience. And so if you change it and you say, okay, I have been created, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ, I have not created jinn and ins except for their obedience. When you understand it in this context, you understand that whatever you do that is in accordance to the obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that is also ibadah. And so what that means, and this is why it broadens your understanding for us as Muslims, and it actually brings a more applicable understanding of Islam for us as Muslims, which is something that is significantly lacking in the ummah today, is we've lacked the understanding of how to apply our deen to the everyday understanding of our dunya. What that means is when you understand that ibadah means anything that I am doing that is in the obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That means that even my going to the gym and taking care of my body, I am doing it with the niyyah, with the intention of being in obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Therefore, me going to the gym and working out is a form of ibadah. Therefore, me taking care of my family is an act of ibadah. Therefore, me going out and working and being able to have rizq so that I can take care of my family and take care of myself, that is an act of ibadah. And so, as you have the more broader understanding and broader definition of this word of ibadah, and you understand that it actually means obedience, then you start to understand that, okay, salah is included in there, me going to the masjid is included in there, all the understandings that we had from the word worship, all of that is also included in obedience. And so whenever I talk about in any of the other podcast episodes, whenever we talk about the word ibadah, that is what it is that we're going to be referring to it as, is going to be obedience, not worship. Right? So when we say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the only one worthy of, everybody says worship, right? No. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the only one worthy of obedience. Right? So we're going to be filling that in there because the words that we use are going to have an impact on how our minds think about our deen. And so that's why I wanted to go ahead and make this episode here to really clarify. So whenever you see this word ibadah in the Quran, right, in Surah Quraysh, which is an episode that we've already touched base on, فَلْيَعْبُدُوا رَبَّ هَذَا الْبَيْتِ, right? You have فَلْيَعْبُدُوا, it's an order from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, فَلْيَعْبُدُوا, make ibadah. What does ibadah mean? You're making obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so that not only includes salah, zakah, hajj, right, all the things that we normally think of as acts of quote unquote worship, they're actually acts of obedience. And so removing this word worship from our verbiage, from our language, from our tongue, when we are in the Islamic context, adds a lot of understanding because we're actually filling it in to mean the real closer meaning to the word ibadah. So وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ, that I have not created the jinn and the ins except for the ibadah of me subhanahu wa ta'ala, and of course this is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaking, is in this regard is for the obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So as long as whatever you do in life, you are doing it halal and you are doing it for the niyyah, for the sake of doing it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for the sake of being in obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, all of that is considered an act of ibadah. And so therefore your entire life can be an act of ibadah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that includes the things that are other than what we quote unquote would call the acts of worship. So I hope that clarifies it, inshallah. If you have any follow-up questions to this, if there is any comments, any questions, any concerns, please don't hesitate to let me know. Inshallah, I want to make sure that this is something that is valuable for everyone that is listening to this. And other than that, we're going to keep on going with our series of going over the meanings of the surah in the end of the Quran. So I will catch you guys on the next one. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik. Nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant. Nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. This is your brother Yasin checking out. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.